Emma walks down the stairs of her building, checking her phone for the 5th time, as if that could slow the clock down. The elevator took too long, her coffee spilled on her blouse, and now she feels like the whole universe conspired to leave her 1 minute behind the world. Out on the street, the evening wind brushes her face like a reminder that the day already started off wrong. She hugs her bag against her chest and quickens her pace, hearing the distant sound of a taxi braking. For a brief moment, she believes she can still make it in time. Her heart races when she sees the glow of yellow headlights reflecting on the wet asphalt. Emma raises her hand, trying to catch the driver's attention, even though she knows she's still too far away. The taxi seems to hesitate for a second, as if destiny itself were taking a deep breath before deciding. But then, the car picks up speed again and simply drives off, taking with it the feeling of a chance that slipped away. Emma stops on the sidewalk, out of breath, with the strange certainty that it wasn't just a taxi she just lost. She leans against a nearby lamppost and takes a long breath, trying to laugh at her own rush. It's just a minute, she thinks, trying to convince herself the world doesn't change that much in so little time. The problem is that her body doesn't buy it, because she's still trembling slightly on the inside. She looks at the time and does mental math, estimating how long it'll take until another car shows up. Messages light up her screen, reminding her of the important appointment she should already be on her way to. A mix of irritation and guilt starts to build, as if everything that went wrong were entirely her fault. Around her, the city stays indifferent. Cars pass, people cross, nobody noticing the small drama on the sidewalk. Emma feels like that 1 minute became a wait, a silent turning point that no one else saw. She bites her lower lip, trying to push away a strange sense of foreboding she can't explain. And for the first time that day, she wonders if being late was really just an accident. In the distance, the sound of sirens cuts through the air, tangled with engines and horns. A chill runs up Emma's neck, as if that sound were connected to something she doesn't know yet. She follows the red and blue flashes reflecting on nearby buildings, all heading toward the main avenue. For a second, she thinks about the taxi that drove off in that exact direction. She tries to dismiss the thought, telling herself big cities are always like this. Something's always happening somewhere. Even so, she can't fully shake the feeling that this minute carries more weight than it should. The world around her looks the same, but inside, something has already shifted. Emma breathes deeply, squares her shoulders, and tries to convince herself there's still time to save the day. She raises her hand again, calmer now, hoping the next taxi will take her far from this discomfort. Meanwhile, the clock keeps moving forward, relentless, as if it were marking more than just the hour. Deep down, Emma has always believed in coincidences, but never really took destiny seriously. To her, things happened because people made choices, nothing more, nothing less. But on that early evening, a simple late minute seems to crack that certainty. It feels like an invisible door just shut in front of her, leaving only the sound of the taxi fading away as an answer. She feels a discomfort in her chest. Not fear exactly, but curiosity about what would have happened had she made it on time. That thought starts looping in her mind, gaining more and more detail. It's almost as if a version of her, somewhere she can't see, actually made it into that car. Emma shakes her head, trying to cut the fantasy before it grows too much. She forces herself to focus on the street, the sidewalk, the present she can still control. But without realizing it, that 1 minute has already become the starting point of another life she'll never live. Emma looks at a ride-hailing app, but the surge price makes her flinch. She decides to wait for a taxi the old-fashioned way, out on the street, like she did before depending so much on her phone. The wind carries the smell of food from a nearby restaurant, mixed with the scent of gasoline. She watches people pass by with bags, backpacks, and lives she'll never know. Her mind tries to calculate time, traffic, and schedule, as if this were a game she still has a chance to win. Part of her thinks about texting to reschedule, but another part insists on trying to get there anyway. She's already late, that much is certain, but not hopelessly late. and that keeps her stuck on that same sidewalk. She grips her phone like an anchor, something that keeps her attached to the illusion of control. The "don't be late" reminder from earlier still echoes in her head. And for the first time, Emma feels like she's fighting not just traffic, but time itself. While she waits, Emma starts noticing details she would usually ignore. The hurried footsteps of a man in a suit crossing the street without looking. The loud laughter of two teenage girls arguing about something that sounds trivial. The dog that insists on sniffing the same spot on the sidewalk, as if something important were there. She realizes how often she lives on autopilot, moving through places without truly seeing anything. Maybe, if she had left 1 minute earlier, she wouldn't notice any of this. That idea makes her feel a strange familiarity with being late, as if there were some hidden purpose in it. Emma doesn't believe in signs, but for a moment, she almost wishes she did. She looks toward the avenue where the sirens disappeared, swallowed by the night. And somehow, without knowing why, she feels like she's exactly where she's supposed to be, even if she's late. A taxi passes on the other side of the street, already occupied, and Emma lets out a resigned sigh. She starts wondering if it wouldn't have been easier to accept the expensive app fare. With each passing minute, her anxiety grows, mixed with irritation directed at herself. She remembers taking a few extra seconds to answer a message before leaving home. It's crazy how tiny decisions can feel enormous when time is tight. Emma feels each passing second like sand slipping through her fingers. At the same time, a part of her resists the idea that this is all just bad luck. She feels like something is holding her there for a reason she can't see yet. That feeling both bothers and comforts her, leaving her heart in a strange place. And while the next taxi doesn't arrive, it's as if life itself were taking a long breath alongside her. When a free taxi finally appears at the corner, Emma almost doesn't believe it. She raises her hand, this time calmer, as if she already knew this one is hers. The driver pulls over slowly, scanning the street like someone looking for an invisible threat. Emma opens the door and gets in, breathing in the mixed smell of leather seats, cheap cologne, and old stories. She gives the address with a steadier voice than she expected. The driver glances at her in the rearview mirror and says the city feels strange tonight. The comment sounds casual, but hooks Emma's attention like a fishing line. She buckles up, leans back, and feels the car start to move. As the taxi pulls away from the sidewalk, Emma has the clear feeling she's leaving something behind. She just doesn't know yet if she left a problem or an entire destiny. The moment they turn the first corner, the driver grumbles at the traffic up ahead. He comments out loud that the main avenue is jammed, probably because of some accident. A chill runs through Emma as she instantly remembers the sirens she heard while waiting. She asks what happened, but he says he doesn't know yet, just heard other drivers talking over the radio. The taxi leaves the obvious route and turns onto a narrower street, cutting through the neighborhood. The building lights look farther away now, as if they'd stepped out of the city's main flow. Emma looks out the window and notices she's never taken this path before, even though she's lived in the area for years. It feels like she's seeing a parallel version of the city, hidden in streets she's always ignored. The driver turns on the radio, and the announcer confirms the accident on the main avenue with details that freeze her blood. Emma falls silent, listening to each word as if they were describing someone else's life. The announcer talks about a collision involving 2 cars and a taxi, giving an approximate time. Emma automatically starts doing mental math, adding up the minutes since she saw that first taxi drive away. The numbers line up uncomfortably well with the time she stood on the sidewalk, watching that car disappear. Her stomach tightens, as if her body understood something before her mind did. The driver lets out a comment about being lucky to have avoided the avenue, trying to lighten the mood. But to Emma, the phrase sounds like a quiet confirmation of something much bigger. She thinks of the sirens, the distant lights, the emptiness she felt seeing the taxi leave without her. Now everything seems connected by an invisible thread running straight through that one lost minute. Emma leans her forehead against the cold glass, feeling the vibration of the moving car. And for the first time, she starts seriously considering that maybe fate isn't just a pretty word. The silence inside the taxi takes on a different weight after the news. Emma tries to push her thoughts elsewhere, but her mind keeps creating scenes. She imagines herself getting into that first taxi, following the main avenue, stuck in that exact traffic. She sees the collision in her head, the shock, the noise, the chaos, as if it were a memory instead of imagination. It's like watching a movie her brain made up on its own, without her permission. For a moment, she feels guilty for being here, safe, taking a different route. She doesn't know whether she should be grateful, scared, or pretend this is all just coincidence. The driver says that sometimes when things go wrong at first, it's because God is redirecting us. Emma isn't religious, but the sentence sinks deep, opening space for a new kind of doubt. What if that 1 minute of delay wasn't a mistake, but a silent act of protection? As the taxi continues through the quieter streets, Emma starts noticing lit windows in the buildings. Each light seems to hold a story she'll never know, happening at the exact same time as hers. She thinks about how tiny choices decide who bumps into whom, who walks into which place, who takes which road. Leaving the house a little earlier or later, spilling coffee, an elevator that takes too long, a missed taxi, a detour. All of it lined up like dominoes, creating a sequence now too precise to feel random. Something inside her shifts, like an old gear beginning to turn in a different direction. Maybe that minute didn't steal anything from her. Maybe it returned something she didn't even know she could lose. Emma takes a deep breath, as if accepting she'll never really know what would have happened on that other version of the night. Still, she can't help feeling like she's living out a reality that almost didn't exist. And that thought, both terrifying and fascinating, begins to change the way she sees everything. The taxi slows down as it approaches a nearly empty intersection, lit by a single yellowish street lamp. A car ahead suddenly signals and stops for no clear reason, forcing the driver to slow almost to a halt. Emma looks to the side and sees a small corner cafe with a glass door and just a few occupied tables. In the window, a simple poster announces a small exhibit of travel photography. She's always liked photos, but never really had time to dive into that interest. As she stares absent-mindedly, one figure catches her attention, someone sitting alone, staring into nothing with a distant look. It's a man in his 30s with an open notebook and a cup of coffee that's already gone cold. For a second, his eyes lift, as if he somehow felt someone watching from inside the taxi. Their eyes meet quickly, too fast to become a memory, yet slow enough to leave a trace. Emma looks away, thinking he's just another stranger on another ordinary night. A few meters later, the car suddenly has to stop again. The driver curses under his breath. A warning light flashes on the dashboard, signaling some mechanical issue he's been ignoring for days. He pulls over right in front of that same cafe, apologizing to Emma as he turns off the engine. He says he needs to check what's going on and that it might take a while to get the car running again. Emma looks at the time, does yet another round of mental math, and feels impatience start to rise. But as she notices the open cafe door so close and the smell of fresh coffee escaping into the street, she hesitates. The driver suggests she wait inside while he works on the car, promising to call another taxi if he can't fix it. For a moment, Emma feels like the universe literally pushed her to that exact spot. She takes a deep breath, thanks him, and decides to step into the cafe like someone accepting a script they didn't write. The tiny bell above the door rings as she walks in, announcing her arrival to a scene that only exists because of a lost minute. Inside, the place feels like a pause button. Time seems to move slower here than out on the street. The lighting is soft, the background music calm, and the smell of coffee mixes with freshly baked bread. Emma chooses a table by the window, where she can still see the stopped taxi and the driver at the open hood. She takes her phone out of her bag but doesn't use it right away, as if something were stopping her from numbing her mind. The tired-looking waitress approaches with a faint smile, asking if she'd like anything. Emma orders a coffee, more for something to do than because she actually wants it. As she waits, she notices the man with the notebook is still there, just a few tables away. He scribbles and erases words on the page like someone wrestling with his own thoughts. That image stirs a strange curiosity in her, almost uncomfortable, like something she's seen before. But she can't remember where. Maybe because it isn't a memory, but a preview of something that hasn't happened yet. The man eventually raises his eyes again, and this time, their gaze lingers a little longer. There's no smile, no greeting, just a quiet recognition between two people who suddenly noticed each other. Emma feels a wave of shyness hit and quickly pretends to be interested in the menu. She hears footsteps coming closer and feels her heartbeat speed up without knowing why. When she looks up, he's standing by her table, notebook closed in his hand. He asks, in a calm voice, if he can sit there, saying that's the best seat to watch the world out there. The line is strange, but just charming enough to break the tension. Emma hesitates for a second, then nods lightly. As he pulls out the chair, she realizes that if she'd caught that first taxi, she would never be here. And without knowing it, she has just met someone who only exists in the version of her life where she missed that ride. They start talking about small things at first, like they need to warm up the silence before touching it. His name is Lucas, and he tells her he's been sitting there for over an hour trying to finish a text that just wouldn't come. He says he writes about real stories that feel like fiction, about unlikely encounters and tiny choices that change everything. Emma laughs, finding it oddly fitting considering the feelings she's been carrying all evening. She half-jokingly tells him she's only there because she missed a taxi by 1 minute. Lucas raises his eyebrows, as if that detail mattered a lot more than she thinks. He asks for specifics, time, place, where the taxi was headed. With each answer, his expression grows more serious, though he tries to hide it. Emma finds that a bit strange, but keeps talking, like she's handing him pieces of a puzzle. Without noticing it, she starts feeling that this delay means much more than she imagined. Her phone buzzes with messages, asking if she's still coming. She glances at the time on the screen, and guilt tries to creep back in, pulling her toward the commitment she missed. But something inside her won't let her stand up just yet, as if this conversation were more urgent than the appointment. Lucas says sometimes life forces us to lose certain things, so we can gain others that were never in the plan. He says it with such conviction that it sounds like he's talking about his own story, not just hers. Emma asks what he had been trying to write before she walked in, curious about this stuck text. He opens the notebook to a blank page and slowly writes a single sentence. She missed the taxi by 1 minute. Then he turns the notebook for her to see, like he's showing her the first line of something important. A shiver runs through Emma, like she's watching herself appear inside a story that's still being written. And she realizes that somehow Lucas had been waiting for someone like her, without knowing who it would be. While they talk, a small TV in the corner turns on, showing images of the accident on the avenue. The volume is low, but the captions are clear enough for Emma to read. She sees the smashed taxi, flashing lights, firefighters around, people recording with their phones. For a moment, the entire cafe falls silent in her perception, as if everything were in slow motion. Lucas notices the color draining from her face and follows her gaze to the screen. He puts 2 and 2 together without her needing to say a word. Time, route, the specific kind of taxi. Emma swallows hard, imagining the same scene in an alternate version of the night where she was inside that car. Her heart races, not only at the thought of what could have happened, but at the realization of what didn't. She feels like she's sitting exactly on the border between 2 lives that will never touch. And that weighs more than any delay, apology, or missed appointment. Then Lucas says something that echoes in Emma's mind like a long whisper. He tells her he likes to imagine parallel realities, different versions of the same night, the same person. In one, maybe she did get into that first taxi and lived through a trauma that would mark her forever. In another, the one they're in, she missed the taxi, walked into the cafe, and met someone she never would have otherwise. He doesn't call it destiny, doesn't romanticize it. He just describes it like someone who's learned to accept the mystery of small changes. Emma wants to disagree, but can't find any argument that feels honest. Deep down, she knows that 1 minute created an invisible fork in her life. On one side, a road she'll never walk, even though it almost became hers. On the other, the road she's on now, sitting in a cafe, talking to someone who wasn't in her plans. And in that moment, she realizes the real enigma isn't what would have happened, but what's still going to grow out of this choice. But while Emma talks to Lucas in that cafe, there's another version of the night unfolding somewhere she'll never see. A version born from the same rush, the same street, the same intention, but with 1 minute playing out differently. A life where the elevator came faster, the coffee didn't spill, and her steps on the sidewalk were just a bit quicker. In that other reality, Emma raises her hand at the exact moment the taxi brakes in front of her. She gets in the car without realizing she's just chosen a completely different destiny. What comes next is the story that almost happened, and that, by a thread of time, doesn't belong to the Emma in the cafe. Now you're about to see what unfolds when that 1 minute isn't lost, but won. Ironically, this minute that she wins comes with a price. Welcome to the second timeline. Emma's alternate life starts here. Emma opens the taxi door, still breathing hard, feeling her heart pounding against her ribs. She can't quite believe she actually made it, like she managed to grab something that was slipping through her fingers. The driver smiles in the rearview mirror, saying he almost left, but something made him wait. Emma smiles back, relieved to finally feel like the day is cooperating. She fastens her seatbelt, adjusts her bag on her lap, and takes a deep breath, allowing herself to believe things will be fine now. But there's something odd in the driver's eyes, a kind of restless speed in his movements. He shifts into gear before she even finishes giving the address, like he's late for something she doesn't know about. Emma tries to ignore the rising unease, telling herself it's just paranoia after a rough day. The taxi speeds onto the main avenue, going slightly faster than it should, slicing through traffic like it owns the lane. And as the car accelerates, Emma feels like the minute she won is starting to charge its price. The building lights flash past the windows too quickly, turning the city into streaks of color. Emma tightens her seatbelt and asks why they're in such a hurry, trying to keep her tone light. The driver answers that he needs to make up for lost time, which doesn't make much sense since she arrived in time. The bad feeling creeps back, crawling through her like a silent warning. She checks the dashboard and sees the speedometer needle vibrating near the limit. Traffic grows heavier up ahead, but the driver doesn't slow down. Instead, he keeps changing lanes, looking for gaps. The radio spits out random news, weather, protests, traffic jams, all blending with the sound of the street. Emma tries to distract herself by looking at her phone, but something deep inside refuses to let her take her eyes off the road. The main avenue, always chaotic, feels more hostile than usual tonight, like it's ready to swallow someone whole. And Emma starts to get the feeling that maybe she didn't really win that minute at all. The driver's radio crackles with interference, and a voice cuts through the static with a traffic alert. He turns up the volume, but the audio keeps breaking, leaving only fragments that make the tension worse. Emma catches bits and pieces: collision, main road, high speed, but can't put it all together. The driver mutters a curse word, annoyed at the sudden buildup of cars ahead. He squeezes the steering wheel tighter than necessary, like he's fighting to control more than just the car. Emma thinks about asking him to pull over, to let her get out, but the words get stuck in her throat. It's like she's been pulled into the sequence and there's no exit ramp anymore. The air inside the taxi grows thick, hot, almost heavy, like the whole city is holding its breath. A motorcycle zips by too close, forcing the driver to swerve sharply to avoid a crash. And Emma realizes she's trapped in a minute that was never meant to happen. The avenue seems to shrink, Or maybe it's just the traffic closing in around the car. The driver tries to switch lanes again, searching for a gap that doesn't exist. Emma looks around and sees nothing but headlights, blinking lights, horns, pure, growing chaos. The radio suddenly clears up for a brief moment, announcing there was an accident a few minutes ago on this very road. Her blood runs cold, her breathing stalls, and her pupils widen, as if her body understands before she does. Emma can't help but think about what might be happening in another version of tonight. One where she missed this taxi and ended up somewhere safer, calmer, slower. But there's no time to follow that thought, because reality out front is moving too fast. The driver slams on the brakes when traffic stops abruptly, and in one instant, everything becomes light, noise, and impact. The sound of metal twisting doesn't feel real when it's that close. The world turns into a box of echoes where everything crashes and bounces back louder. Emma feels her body thrown forward, the seatbelt digging violently into her chest. Her head spins, and the air escapes in a short gasp that never turns into a scream. A white flash fills her vision, then blurs, then turns to black. The taxi smashes into the car ahead and then gets hit from the side by another vehicle. The lights outside swirl in broken patterns, like the city itself lost its balance. Emma tries to understand what just happened, but her mind can't keep up with the speed of it all. The sound of horns and shouting slowly emerges, like it's coming from underwater. And in the middle of the chaos, one thought surfaces. I wasn't supposed to be here. The world returns slowly, like someone turning the volume knob from 0 to low. Emma's head throbs, her ears ring with a piercing buzz, an inner alarm that won't turn off. Her arms shake, her legs don't quite respond, and her chest aches where the belt stopped her. The driver tries to say something, but his voice sounds far away, distorted. There's blood on the window. She doesn't know if it's hers or someone else's. Ambulance lights show up minutes later, though to Emma it feels like hours. She feels hands trying to help, words washing in and out of consciousness like waves. The air feels heavier than it should, filled with the smell of smoke, gasoline, and fear. She tries to move her fingers just to prove she's still there inside that injured body. When she finally manages to, she opens her eyes just enough to see the avenue turned into a nightmare scene. The hands lifting her out of the car are firm and urgent, but the world still spins too much. Emma feels the cold air on her skin as they lay her onto a stretcher. Rescue radios crackle with information about injuries, blocked lanes, and rerouted traffic. She tries to focus on something concrete, but everything feels distant, like she's watching herself from outside. Someone asks her name, age, if she feels pain anywhere. She answers in fragments. The ambulance siren is so loud it feels like it vibrates inside her bones. The city outside turns into a mosaic of blurred lights, stuck at the edge of her vision. Emma tries to latch onto some thread of reality, but everything slips away. The only thing that stays is the sensation that this night wasn't meant to be hers. That this so-called 1 minute was actually a quiet trap laid by destiny. On the way to the hospital, her consciousness fades in and out like it's caught in a tug of war. She smells disinfectant, hears urgent voices talking about tests, blood pressure, possible trauma. Her body refuses to relax, locked in a permanent state of defense. Tears roll down without her noticing, not from physical pain, but from a deep, nameless fear. A fear that goes beyond the accident itself. It's something bigger, older, more primal. The stretcher wheels rattle as they push her down bright hallways, past cold white walls and strange silence. Emma tries to take a deep breath, but the air feels stuck in her throat. She thinks about every decision she made that day, every little delay that didn't exist in this version of events. Then she realizes that somewhere there's an Emma who isn't living this, an Emma who missed the taxi and kept her life. Emma wakes up in a hospital room with no idea how much time has passed since the crash. The light from the overhead lamp feels like a blade cutting through her eyes. A monitor beeps beside her, tracking her still racing heartbeat. Her left leg is immobilized, her right arm wrapped in bandages, a small cut on her forehead. Her whole body feels heavy, like she's been dragged out of a storm. The memory of the impact returns in flashes, small fragments that hurt even without full clarity. The siren, the shattering glass, the smell of gasoline, the lights spinning out of control. Emma closes her eyes, trying to steady her breathing so panic doesn't win. A nurse walks in with a soft smile, telling her she was lucky. But Emma doesn't find any comfort in the word lucky tonight. The nurse explains that, judging by the crash scene, it could have ended much worse. Some drivers were seriously injured, but luckily, no fatalities. Emma thanks her with a weak voice, but inside she feels a strange emptiness she can't name. The nurse also says she was treated quickly thanks to an off-duty firefighter who passed by just minutes after the crash. One more coincidence that sounds like a cosmic joke. Emma inhales deeply and tries to hold on to the fact that she survived, but her mind keeps picturing that other Emma, the one who never got into the taxi, living somewhere else in peace. Maybe she's sitting in a cafe right now, talking to someone she'll never meet in this reality. That idea sends a chill through her, like she's observing her own life from a parallel lens. And she starts to realize that it's not just her body that's bruised. Her soul is, too. In the days that follow, Emma goes through tests, physio sessions, and long stretches of silence. The doctors say she'll be okay, but warn that the emotional trauma might linger. She tries to follow their advice, but her mind is trapped in the what-ifs. What if she had left a little later? What if the elevator had stopped on another floor? What if she had missed that taxi by just 1 minute? These questions haunt her like stubborn ghosts. She can't help seeing two versions of the same night running side by side. In one, destiny is brutal and unpredictable. In the other, everything feels lighter, safer, softer. And the feeling that she ended up in the worst version grows heavier by the day. Emma is discharged after a few days, sent home with instructions to rest. The smashed taxi appears in the news as just another accident in the city. But to her, that car is a line drawn between two possible lives. She moves around her apartment slowly, feeling each step as a reminder of the impact. The silence at home seems deeper than usual, nearly suffocating. She tries to return to normal, brewing coffee, setting the table, turning on the TV. But everything feels distant, like echoes from someone else's routine. Some nights she dreams of headlights, sirens, and a version of herself who never went through this. She wakes up with the certainty that something was taken from her, something she'll never even be able to name. That night becomes an invisible scar, one that hurts even without being seen. Days drag on as Emma tries to put her life back together piece by piece. Every small action, opening a door, climbing a step, crossing a street, feels emotionally loaded now. She realizes she's developed an almost instinctive resistance to taxis. Just seeing one drive by makes her stomach clench. Fear shows up in subtle ways, hiding inside sensations she still doesn't know how to label. It's like her mind is building invisible rules to keep her safe. Emma tells herself it's only a phase, that it'll pass with time. But her body doesn't forget easily what it went through on that avenue. While she sips her morning coffee, she glances at the clock and remembers the minute that brought her here, and wonders if, in another life, she'd be doing something entirely different right now. She decides to seek therapy, realizing the trauma isn't just physical. The psychologist listens patiently, asking Emma to describe everything in detail. Emma talks about the taxi, the rush, the crash, and the sensations that stayed behind. Then, hesitantly, she brings up the idea of a second version of the same night. The psychologist doesn't judge. She just asks how Emma feels when she imagines that other self. Emma answers honestly. She feels jealous of the version of herself that didn't suffer. It feels like somewhere there's a life where everything turned out better, lighter, simpler, safer, and that somehow she got stuck with the worst branch of that night. The psychologist encourages her to work through this sense of loss, of what could have been. But Emma knows it runs deeper than what words can easily fix. As time passes, Emma starts noticing strange patterns, small details that feel out of place, like reality was patched together in a hurry. An object she swears she remembers in a different spot. A text message timestamp that feels wrong for the moment she remembers living. A sudden sense of familiarity with faces she's sure she's never seen before. It's as if life is trying to adjust something that never truly belonged to her path. She tries to ignore it, but these moments pile up, creating cracks in her sense of normal. Emma begins to feel like she's carrying two sets of memories, the real ones and the ones from the life she didn't live, and it traps her in a kind of emotional maze. A place where every new decision seems to echo a little louder than it should. Like destiny is watching closely, waiting for her next move. One day, on her way back from a session, Emma passes a cafe she doesn't recognize. The simple sign, the glass door, the smell of coffee wafting out. It all feels strangely comforting. She stops by the window and looks inside for a moment, unable to explain why she's so drawn to it. There's a man sitting alone, writing in a notebook, unaware of the world around him. He seems deeply focused, crossing out and rewriting lines like he's wrestling with something important. A strange shiver runs through Emma, like she's looking at a memory that doesn't belong to this life. She takes a step forward, as if pulled toward the door, but stops short of touching it. Her heart races for no clear reason, and she backs away quickly, almost stumbling. She has no idea who that man is, but feels she should. And that feeling opens yet another crack in the story she thought was hers. That night, Emma lies in bed unable to sleep. The room is quiet, but her mind is anything but. She feels two versions of her story coexisting inside her, fighting for space. One marked by impact, pain, and trauma, the other by doors that never closed on her. The weight of that duality almost feels physical, like pressure on her chest. She closes her eyes and imagines herself running down the street, arriving 1 minute too late. She imagines the taxi driving away, her phone buzzing, the wait on the sidewalk, the corner cafe. She imagines a life that now feels like a distant dream, something that was never hers. And she realizes, with brutal clarity, how fragile destiny really is. 1 minute can create two lives that never cross again. Emma gets out of bed and walks to the window, staring at the city lights. The headlights, the buildings, the muffled sounds of the street. Everything feels loaded with new meaning. She thinks about all the choices life makes on our behalf, even when we believe we're in control. How everything could have been different if she had just breathed faster or slower. If she had pressed the elevator button a second earlier. If she had closed her apartment door 2 steps quicker. The night itself feels suspended in the air, holding the same question in silence. She touches the cold glass, trying to anchor herself in something solid. But the feeling lingers, that she's living a life that wasn't meant to be hers. And that realization becomes the newest ghost haunting her story. Weeks go by, and Emma slowly tries to move on, even with that weight inside her. Every minute starts to feel more important, filled with invisible consequences. She finds herself hesitating before small choices that used to be automatic, as if she's afraid of creating another sudden fork in her path. The trauma is no longer just about the crash, it's about the awareness of how fragile everything is. Emma loses some of her spontaneity, avoiding rush, avoiding pushing time. She walks slower now, not by choice, but by fear of what speed might bring. Some people notice she's changed, but don't grasp how deep the change goes. She smiles, deflects, pretends everything is normal. But she knows she'll never be exactly the same again. One afternoon, Emma sees a yellow taxi identical to the one from the night of the accident. Her body reacts before her mind. Her heart slams, her hands sweat, her legs freeze. The driver honks impatiently, but she can't move. It's like she's been thrown back into that frozen moment of impact. She closes her eyes and forces herself to breathe, fighting the panic wrapping around her. When she opens them again, the taxi is already gone, leaving only the shadow of fear behind. Emma understands that this trauma might walk beside her for a long time, but it doesn't have to define her entire journey. Still, she knows she will never forget the minute that brought her here. A minute that could have been something else, but wasn't. A minute that changed everything in two different lives.